The studio lights of the View blaze down, casting a warm glow over the vibrant set, where the audience hums with anticipation, their phones already raised to capture every moment. The energy is electric, the kind that only comes when a living legend is about to take the stage. Will Smith strides out, his signature charisma radiating like a supernova, confident but approachable, with that megawatt smile that's launched 1,000 blockbusters. He's here to promote his latest film, a passion project about resilience and redemption. But the crowd knows Will brings more than just movie talk. He carries a story, a weight, a truth that's been simmering beneath the surface of his public persona for years. The co-hosts Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Sarah Haynes rise to greet him. Their smiles professional but warm, though Whoopi's eyes hold a glint of something sharper, like a seasoned boxer sizing up an opponent. The audience erupts, clapping and cheering, some shouting, "We love you, Will," as he settles into the guest chair, giving a playful wave that quiets the room just enough for the show to begin. "Welcome back to The View," Whoopi announces, her voice rich with that familiar gravitas. "Today, we are thrilled to have the one and only Will Smith with us." The crowd roars again, and Will nods, his smile tight but genuine, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. "Thank you, Whoopi. Thank you, ladies. It's good to be here," he says, his tone smooth, almost musical, but there's a subtle edge, like he's testing the waters. The cameras roll, the stage is set, and what was supposed to be a feel-good promotional sit-down is about to ignite into something no one saw coming. Whoopi leans forward, her elbows resting on the table, her gaze steady. "Will, you've been killing it lately. New movie, new music, and you're out here inspiring folks with your story. Let's talk about this film. It's personal for you, right? It's got themes of family, struggle, and pushing through the noise. Sounds like it's drawn from your own life." The question is soft, an easy lob, but Will's eyes flicker, catching the undercurrent. He shifts in his seat, his smile holding but his posture stiffening just enough to notice. "Yeah, Whoopi, it's real personal," he says, his voice warm but deliberate. "This film's about what it means to stand tall when the world's trying to knock you down. I've been through some storms, me, Jada. The kids and I wanted to put that heart into something real, something that speaks to folks who felt counted out." The audience murmurs in approval, a few clapping softly, and Sunny Hostin jumps in, her tone bright. "That's beautiful, Will. You've always been open about your journey, especially with family and navigating Hollywood. What's it like pouring that into your art?" Will nods, his expression softening as he leans back, ready to share. "It's everything, Sunny. Hollywood's a beast, you know. It's glitz and glamour on the outside, but behind the scenes it's a grind. You're fighting stereotypes, fighting to be seen as more than a type. For me, it's been about breaking those boxes, being a black man, a father, a husband, and still saying, 'This is who I am.' This film's my way of showing that fight, that love, that truth." Ember from 6. The crowd claps again, louder this time, and Will's words land with weight, his sincerity filling the room. But Whoopi's not done. She tilts her head, her dreads shifting slightly, and her voice takes on a probing edge. "That's powerful, Will, and you've been vocal about those struggles. But some folks say you're not just sharing your truth, you're building a brand out of it. Books, interviews, now this movie. How do you respond to critics who say you're turning your pain into a product?" The question slices through the air, sharp and unexpected, and the audience stills, their phones lowering slightly as they sense the shift. Will's smile fades, his jaw tightening just enough to betray a flash of irritation. He leans forward, his hands unclasping, fingers tapping the armrest. "Whoopi, let's be real," he says, his voice low but firm, each word measured. "I'm not out here selling pain. I'm telling my story, your story. Me and Jada, we've been through hell and back with the media, with this industry, with people trying to tear us down. You think I wanted that? You think I wanted my kids to see their parents dragged through the mud? I'm speaking out because silence ain't an option. If that looks like a brand to some folks, that's their lens, not my truth." The audience stirs, a few whispering, others nodding in solidarity. Joy Behar raises an eyebrow, jumping in with her trademark bluntness. "But Will, you've got to admit, the way you've gone public, those raw social media posts, the memoir, the red table talks, it's a lot. Some say it's less about healing and more about staying relevant. How do you draw that line?" The question stings, and Will's eyes narrow, his composure holding but fraying at the edges. He lets out a short laugh, not out of amusement but disbelief, shaking his head. Joy? Relevance? You think I'm out here chasing clout? Let me tell you something. When you're a black man in this game, you don't get to just stay relevant. You're either perfect or you're erased. I've spent decades trying to be the guy everyone loves. Fresh Prince, action hero, Oscar winner, and it still wasn't enough. The second I showed I was human, the second I made a mistake, the world turned. You know what that's like? To have your family's name dragged? To see Jada cry because of lies in the headlines and still have to smile for the cameras? I'm not chasing relevance. I'm fighting for my peace. The crowd erupts, clapping and cheering, some shouting, "Preach, Will!" as his words hit home. His passion is undeniable, his voice rising with a fire that's both controlled and raw. Sarah Haynes, sensing the tension, tries to steer things back. Will, that's so real, and I think a lot of us relate to that fight. Can you tell us more about how your family inspired this film? Maybe a story from Jada or the kids? It's a lifeline, a chance to cool the heat. But Whoopi cuts in before Will can answer, her tone calm but pointed. Hold up, Sarah. I hear you, Will, about fighting for peace. But let's not gloss over this. You're saying it's about truth, but when you put your life out there, books, shows, movies, it's not just your truth anymore. It's a product people buy, and that comes with responsibility. Are you telling the whole story, or just the parts that make you the hero? The room goes quiet, the audience holding their breath, the co-hosts glancing at each other. Whoopi's words are a gauntlet thrown, and Will's face shifts shock, then resolve, his eyes locking onto hers like a man ready for battle. Whoopi, you're coming at me like I'm scripting some fairy tale, Will says, his voice steady but laced with heat. You think I'm out here playing the hero? Let me tell you about heroes. My mom was a hero working 2 jobs, raising me in Philly, keeping me out of trouble when the streets were calling. She didn't get a book deal or a movie. She got stress, struggle, and a system that didn't care. Jada's a hero, holding our family together when the world tried to rip it apart. Me? I'm not a hero. I'm a man trying to do right by them, trying to speak up so the next generation doesn't have to fight the same fights. You call that a product? I call it survival. The audience explodes again, their applause thunderous, some standing as Will's words resonate. His vulnerability, his fire, it's all laid bare and the room feels it. But Whoopi doesn't flinch. She leans back, her arms crossed, her expression unyielding. Will, I respect your passion, but don't act like you're the only one who's fought. I've been in this game longer than you, seen the same systems, faced the same walls. The difference is, I didn't turn my pain into a spotlight. You're not just surviving, you're selling. There's a line between sharing and performing, and I'm asking, where's that line for you? The question lands like a punch, and Will's composure cracks, his hands balling into loose fists. He leans forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper, but it carries the weight of a shout. Performing? Whoopi, you're sitting here, on this stage, telling me I'm performing? Let me tell you about performing. Performing is smiling through the pain when the media calls your wife names. Performing is showing up to work when your kids are hurting because of lies online. Performing is carrying the weight of being Will Smith, when all you want is to be a husband, a father, a son. I'm not performing. I'm peeling back the curtain, showing the scars. Because if I don't, who will? You think I wanted this fight? You think I wanted to be the guy standing here airing it all out? I didn't choose this. This chose me. The audience is on its feet now, their cheers deafening, phones capturing every second of Will's raw intensity. Security shifts at the edges of the set, sensing the rising tide. But Will's not done. He points to the crowd, his voice rising. These folks get it. They know what it's like to be judged, to be told your story doesn't matter. I'm speaking for them, for us, for every black family who's had to fight to be seen. Whoopi's eyes narrow, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Will, you're speaking, all right, but who's listening? You're preaching to the choir, but the folks who need to hear it, the ones running the systems you're calling out, they're not in this room. You're selling your story to people who already love you, and that's a choice. You're not just a man anymore. You're a brand, a movement, and that comes with power. What are you doing with that power besides pointing fingers? The crowd gasps, the tension palpable, as Will's face flashes with a mix of anger and disbelief. He shakes his head, a bitter smile curling his lips. Power. You think this is about power? Whoopi, I've got no power in those boardrooms. No power when the headlines twist my words. No power when my family's name is dragged through the mud. All I've got is my voice, and I'm using it. If that makes me a brand, fine. But don't sit there and act like I'm the one playing the game. This industry, this system, it's been playing me my whole life. The studio is a powder keg. The audience hanging on every word. The co-host frozen, unsure how to steer this runaway train. Will's passion, his truth, it's a force of nature, and Whoopi's unyielding challenge is the spark threatening to set it all ablaze. The segment was meant to be a celebration, a moment of inspiration, but it's become a battlefield, and the war is just beginning. As the cameras zoom in, capturing the fire in Will's eyes and the steel in Whoopi's stare, one thing is clear. This is no ordinary talk show moment. This is history in the making, and the audience knows it. Their cheers and gasps a testament to the raw, unfiltered truth unfolding before them. The studio of The View is a pressure cooker, the air thick with the aftermath of Will Smith's fiery exchange with Whoopi Goldberg. The audience, still reeling from the raw intensity of Chapter 1, sits on the edge of their seats, phones aloft, capturing every flicker of emotion on Will's face. His eyes burn with a mix of defiance and pain, his posture taut like a coiled spring, while Whoopi remains a fortress of calm, her gaze unyielding, her hands folded neatly on the table. The other co-hosts, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Sarah Haynes exchange uneasy glances, their usual banter replaced by a tense silence. The crowd's earlier cheers have subsided into a low hum of anticipation, punctuated by whispers and the occasional gasp. This isn't the feel-good interview they expected. It's a clash of titans, and the stakes are climbing higher by the second. Will's last words, "This industry, this system, it's been playing me my whole life," hang in the air, a challenge that demands a response. Whoopi leans forward, her voice steady but laced with a razor's edge. "Will, you say the system's playing you, but let's talk about how you're playing it right back. That Oscar moment, the memoirs, the social media confessions, you've made choices that keep you in the spotlight. You're not just a victim here. You're a strategist. So, what's the end game?" The question lands like a grenade, and the audience holds its breath, waiting for the explosion. Will's jaw clenches, his hands gripping the armrests as he fights to keep his composure. He lets out a slow breath, his eyes never leaving Whoopi's. "Endgame, you think I'm out here playing chess, Whoopi? Let me tell you about my strategy. My strategy was trying to keep my family whole when the world was tearing us apart. My strategy was showing up every day, knowing the media was waiting to twist my every move. That Oscar moment?" His voice cracks, a flash of vulnerability breaking through his resolve. "That wasn't strategy. That was a man breaking under pressure, trying to protect the woman he loves from a world that never stops coming for her. You call that playing the system? I call it surviving it." The audience erupts, their applause thunderous, some shouting, "We got you, Will," as his words strike a chord. A woman in the front row wipes away a tear, nodding fiercely, while others raise their phones higher, live streaming the moment to the world. Will's pain is palpable, his truth laid bare, and the crowd feels it in their bones. But Whoopi doesn't blink. She leans back, her expression a mix of skepticism and resolve. "Surviving, Will? I hear you, but let's not rewrite history. That night at the Oscars, you made a choice aloud, public choice that had consequences. You didn't just defend Jada, you turned a private moment into a global spectacle. And now, with the books, the interviews, the films, you're capitalizing on that spectacle. That's not survival, that's strategy." The crowd gasps, a ripple of shock spreading through the room. Joy Behar shifts uncomfortably, her usual quips nowhere to be found, while Sunny Hostin scribbles something on her notepad, her brow furrowed. Will's eyes flash with a mix of anger and disbelief, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Capitalizing? You're sitting there, in front of these people, telling me I'm profiting off my pain? Whoopi, let me take you back. When Jada was being dragged online, when the memes and the headlines were tearing her apart, where was the industry? Where were the folks who called us friends? They were silent, or worse, they were piling on. I stood up that night because I was done letting the world hurt her. You want to call that a spectacle? Fine, but don't you dare call it a cash grab." The audience roars again, their cheers shaking the studio, some standing to clap as Will's passion fills the room. A man in the back shouts, "Tell it, Will," while others wave their hands in solidarity. Security hovers at the edges of the set, their radios crackling softly, But the crowd's energy is electric, feeding Will's fire. He leans forward, his voice rising now, each word a hammer striking steel. You want to talk about choices? Let's talk about the choices this system forces on you. I grew up in Philly, watching my mom work herself to the bone, knowing the world didn't care about her dreams. I clawed my way into Hollywood, thinking if I played by the rules, smiled big, stayed likable, I'd make it. But the rules changed. The second I showed I was human, the second I stood up for my wife, they turned on me. You know what that's like, Whoopi? To have your whole life dissected, your mistakes blown up, while the people who made the rules skate free? His voice trembles, not with weakness, but with a deep, searing truth, and the audience feels it, their murmurs of agreement growing louder. Whoopi raises a hand, her tone sharp but controlled. Will, I'm not saying you haven't been through it. I'm saying you're not the only one. I've been in this game since you were rapping about parents not understanding. I've seen the system chew up black folks and spit them out. But you don't get to act like you're the only one carrying scars. You're using yours to sell a story, and that story's got holes. You talk about protecting Jada, but what about the folks you've called out along the way? Your colleagues, your peers, the ones who didn't get a say in your narrative? The accusation cuts deep, and Will's face shifts, a flicker of doubt crossing his features before he shakes it off. He stands, his chair scraping the floor, his presence commanding the room. Holes? You think my story's got holes? Let me tell you about holes, Whoopi. There's a hole in the system that lets the media crucify black women like Jada while the world laughs. There's a hole in the industry that tells you to stay quiet when your family's under attack. There's a hole in my heart from watching my mom suffer, knowing I couldn't fix it. I'm not calling out my peers for clout. I'm calling out a machine that's been breaking us for years. The crowd is on its feet now, their applause deafening, a tidal wave of support crashing over the set. A young woman in the audience holds up a sign that reads, "We stand with Will," and others chant his name, their voices echoing off the walls. Will paces a step, his energy uncontainable, his hands gesturing as he speaks. You want to know why I wrote that book? Why I made this movie? It's not about money. It's about my kids Willow, Jade, and Trey. I want them to grow up in a world where they don't have to hide who they are, where they don't have to smile through the pain. I want them to know their dad fought for something bigger than a paycheck. His voice breaks, and he pauses, his chest heaving, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. The audience is silent now, hanging on his every word, some wiping their eyes as his emotion washes over them. He turns to the crowd, his voice softening but no less powerful. And I'm fighting for all of you too. For every person who's been told their story doesn't matter, their pain doesn't count. That's my endgame. And the studio shakes with applause, the sound so loud it drowns out the co-host's attempts to interject. Sarah Haynes tries to speak, her voice barely audible. Well, that's so moving, and I think... But Whoopi cuts her off, her tone icy. Moving, sure, but let's not get lost in the moment. Will, you're painting yourself as this lone warrior, but you're not alone. You've got a platform most people would kill for movies, music, millions of followers. You're not just fighting, you're shaping the narrative. And when you point fingers at the system, you're also pointing at people who've worked with you, supported you, who don't get to respond on this stage. That's power, and you're wielding it. The crowd quiets, some murmuring in disagreement, others nodding as Whoopi's words sink in. Will stops pacing, his eyes locking onto hers, his voice low and deliberate. Power? You keep saying that, Whoopi, but let me tell you about power. Power is the studios that decide who gets a shot and who doesn't. Power is the media that picks which stories to amplify and which to bury. Power is the system that let Jada's pain become a punchline while I had to stand there and take it. I don't have that kind of power. All I have is my truth, and I'm done letting it be silenced. The tension is unbearable. The studio, a battlefield of ideals. Joy Behar, sensing the moment slipping, tries to lighten the mood. Okay, you two, let's take a breath. Will, maybe tell us something fun about the movie, any behind-the-scenes stories? But Will isn't having it. He sits back down, his eyes still on Whoopi, his voice steady but fierce. Nah, Joy, we're past fun. Whoopi wants to talk about truth. Let's talk. You say I'm shaping the narrative, but what about the narrative this show spins? Every day, you sit here, picking apart people's lives, turning their struggles into sound bites. You call that holding people accountable? I call it feeding the same machine you claim to challenge. The crowd gasps, a few cheering, others whispering in shock. Whoopi's eyebrows shoot up, her calm facade cracking for the first time. This show? Will, you came here as a guest, and now you're throwing stones at our house? We give people a platform to speak, just like we're doing for you right now. But you don't get to rewrite the rules just because you don't like the questions. Will leans forward, his voice a blade now, cutting through the noise. Rules? Whoopi? The rules were written to keep people like me in line. Smile, be grateful, don't make waves. I played by those rules for years, and where did it get me? Watching my wife suffer, my kids hurt, my mom's legacy ignored. I'm done with the rules. I'm here to break them. The audience explodes. Their cheers a tidal wave, some chanting, Will, Will, as security shifts nervously. Whoopi's face hardens, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm. Break them then, but don't cry foul when the world pushes back. You're not the only one with a story, Will. You're just the loudest right now. The words are a spark, and the fire between them blazes hotter, setting the stage for a showdown that will echo far beyond the studio walls. The View studio is a cauldron of raw emotion, the air crackling with the intensity of Will Smith's clash with Whoopi Goldberg. The audience, a sea of rapt faces, is caught in the throes of a moment that feels less like a talk show and more like a cultural reckoning. Will's last words, I'm done with the rules, I'm here to break them, still echo, met with a thunderous roar from the crowd, their cheers a mix of awe and defiance. Phones are raised high, capturing every second of this historic showdown, while security guards shift uneasily at the perimeter, their hands hovering near radios. Whoopi, a pillar of composure, sits with her arms crossed, her eyes locked on Will, unflinching despite the storm he's unleashed. The other co-hosts, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Sarah Haynes, look like they're holding their breath, their notes forgotten, their usual chatter silenced by the weight of the moment. The cameras zoom in, framing Will's resolute posture against Whoopi's steely gaze, and the world watches, knowing this is no ordinary interview. It's a battle for truth, legacy, and the soul of an industry. Whoopi's voice cuts through the fading applause, low and deliberate. Break the rules, Will? That's a bold claim. But when you break things, you leave pieces for others to clean up. You're talking about your truth, but what about the collateral damage? Your family, your peers, the people who believed in you, how do they fit into this revolution of yours? The question is a scalpel, precise and piercing, and the audience leans in, sensing the final act of this drama unfolding. Will stands again, his movements deliberate, his presence filling the room like a force of nature. His eyes sweep the audience, connecting with their nods and murmurs, before returning to Whoopi. Collateral damage? He repeats, his voice steady but laced with a quiet fury. Whoopi, you're talking about damage? Let's talk about the damage done to my family before I ever said a word. Let's talk about Jada, who's been vilified, mocked, and reduced to a punchline by an industry that claims to celebrate her. Let's talk about my kids, who've had to grow up under a microscope, their every move judged because of who their parents are. Let's talk about my mother, who worked her whole life to give me a shot, only to see her son's name dragged through the mud. You want to know about damage? I've been cleaning up the pieces of this system's wreckage my whole career. The crowd erupts, their applause shaking the rafters, some chanting, Will, Will, as others wave homemade signs reading, Truth Matters. A young man in the back stands, pumping his fist, while a woman nearby dabs at her eyes, moved by Will's raw honesty. Whoopi raises a hand, her tone sharp but measured. I hear you, Will, and nobody's denying your family's been through it. But you're not the only one picking up pieces. You've called out the industry, the media, even your own circle, and that's your right. But when you do that on this scale, books, movies, global platforms, you're not just speaking. You're shaping how the world sees those people, those systems. You're not just a man anymore, you're a movement. And movements have consequences. Are you ready to own those? The audience quiets, her words sinking in, a challenge that demands an answer. Will's face flickers with a mix of resolve and reflection, his hands clenching briefly before he steps forward, closer to the table, his voice rising with a passion that commands the room. Consequences? Whoopi, I've been living with consequences my whole life. The consequence of being a black man in Hollywood, where you're told to smile and stay grateful, no matter what. The consequence of loving a woman like Jada, who's been targeted for being strong, for being real. The consequence of raising kids in a world that judges them before they even speak. I'm not afraid of consequences. I'm afraid of silence, of letting this machine keep grinding us down until there's nothing left. The crowd roars again, their cheers a tidal wave, some standing to clap, others shouting words of support. A group of women in the front row holds up a banner that reads, "We see you, Will," their faces alight with admiration. Security tightens their formation, sensing the crowd's fervor, but Will's energy is infectious, his truth a beacon. He turns to the audience, his voice softening but no less powerful. "This isn't just about me. This is about every one of you who's ever felt invisible, who's ever been told your story doesn't matter. I'm standing here because I believe in a world where we don't have to hide our scars, where we don't have to play by rules that were never made for us. That's my movement, Whoopi. That's what I'm fighting for." The applause is deafening, the studio trembling with the crowd's passion, their phones capturing a moment that's already going viral. Sunny Hostin tries to interject, her voice gentle but firm. "Will, that's inspiring, and I think we all feel that. But can we talk about healing? How do you move forward without burning bridges?" It's a soft pitch, a chance to de-escalate, but Will shakes his head, his eyes still on Whoopi. "Healing?" he says, his voice tinged with a bitter laugh. "Sunny, I'd love to talk about healing, but healing doesn't happen when the wounds are still fresh. You don't heal by pretending the system's fine, by shaking hands with the same folks who stabbed you in the back. Healing starts with truth, and the truth is, this industry's been profiting off our pain for decades. They put us on screens, give us awards, but the second we step out of line, they remind us who's in charge. I'm not burning bridges, Sonny. I'm building new ones for my kids, for the next generation, for every artist who's been told to shut up and play along." The audience is on its feet now, their cheers a symphony of support, some chanting, "Build those bridges," as Will's vision takes hold. Whoopi's expression hardens, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Building bridges, Will? That's a nice soundbite, but let's be real. You're not just building, you're tearing down the very industry that gave you your start, the people who opened doors for you. You talk about truth, but your truth is a one-man show. What about the truth of those you've called out? Your peers, your mentors, the ones who don't get a mic to respond?" The accusation lands like a thunderclap, and the crowd gasps, a few murmuring in disagreement. Will pauses, his chest heaving, his eyes searching Whoopi's for a moment before he responds, his voice low but resonant. "A one-man show? Whoopi, you think I'm out here alone? I'm carrying the weight of every artist who's been silenced, every family who's been torn apart by this machine. You say I'm tearing down the industry? Good. If that industry's built on lies, on exploitation, on telling us to be grateful for scraps, then it deserves to be torn down. I'm not here to protect the status quo. I'm here to rewrite it." The audience explodes, their applause a seismic force, some leaping from their seats, others waving their arms in solidarity. A man in the crowd shouts, "Rewrite it, Will," while a woman nearby holds up her phone, streaming the moment to thousands online. The co-hosts look stunned, their usual control slipping as Will's words ignite the room. Whoopi leans forward, her voice icy now, her patience fraying. "Rewrite it, Will? You're not rewriting anything. You're selling a narrative on where you're the hero, and everyone else is the villain. That's not revolution, that's ego. You've got the world's attention, millions in your pocket, and you're still acting like you're fighting from the bottom. You're not the underdog anymore. You're the one with the megaphone, and you're using it to drown out everyone else." The crowd quiets, her words a stark contrast to Will's fire, and for a moment, doubt flickers in his eyes. He steps back, his hands falling to his sides, his voice softening but no less resolute. "Ego? Whoopi? This isn't about ego. This is about accountability. You say I'm drowning out others? I'm amplifying the voiceless, the artists who never got a shot, the families who never got a headline. You want to talk about megaphones? This industry's had the biggest one for years, and they've used it to silence us, to control us, to tell us our pain isn't real. I'm taking that megaphone back, not for me, but for them." He points to the audience, his gesture sweeping across the room, and the crowd roars, their cheers a testament to his conviction. The tension is unbearable, the studio a crucible of ideals. Joy Behar, desperate to regain control, tries to pivot. "All right, Will, Whoopi, let's cool it down. Maybe we can talk about the movie again, something positive?" But Will cuts her off, his voice booming now, a preacher at the pulpit. Positive? Joy, there's nothing positive about pretending everything's fine. I'm done with that. I'm done with this industry's game, with its fake smiles and empty promises. I'm standing here telling you I'm free, free from their rules, free from their lies, and I'm not alone. He turns to the audience, his arms outstretched, his voice a clarion call. Who's with me? Who's ready to be free? The crowd loses it, their cheers a tidal wave, some rushing to the edge of their seats, others chanting, "We're free! We're free!" The studio shakes, the energy uncontainable. As Will's vision takes hold, a movement born in real time. Whoopi stands now, her voice iron, matching his intensity. Free? Will, you're not free. You're chained to this narrative you've built, this story where you're the savior and everyone else is the enemy. You came here as a guest, and you've turned this into a rally. That's not freedom. That's chaos. The crowd boos, a rare moment of defiance against Whoopi, and she raises a hand, silencing them. You don't get to come into my house and rewrite my show. You want to preach? Do it somewhere else. The words are a bombshell, and Will's face shifts shock, then resolve. He steps forward, his voice calm but absolute. Your house? Whoopi? This isn't your house. This is their house. He points to the audience, their cheers surging. And they're done with the old guard, done with the system that's kept us down. I don't need your stage. I've got theirs. He turns to the crowd, his voice soaring. I'm walking out, not because I'm running, but because I'm building something new, a Hollywood where truth wins, where love wins, where we win. The audience is a volcano, their applause cataclysmic, some rushing to the aisles, others chanting his name. Will strides off the set, his head high, his steps deliberate, as the crowd showers him with love, their voices a chorus of triumph. Whoopi watches him go, her jaw set, her eyes heavy with something unspoken. She turns to the camera, her voice steady but strained. Well, that was something. We'll be right back. But the audience knows this wasn't just a segment. It was a revolution, and Will Smith, the man who dared to break the rules, walks away a hero, his truth ringing in their hearts, his victory sealed by their unwavering love.